The 49ers lose another one, and just like the hat says, make the 49ers great again. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second, and it's another post-game rant with my guy David. What's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, baby. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. I was in Palm Desert over here. This is the golf course hat. I don't even swing a club, but when I wear it, even looking like this, they think I'm a pro walking the fairways. So golf fashion has advanced in years. You can wear a beard now in golf. But yeah, I'm good. I'm back in Minnesota, and we've got a lot to talk about tonight because as this game was winding down, we had our list of things, and then all of a sudden, some twists and turns. And it wouldn't be 49er football without drama.
No, it definitely wouldn't be 49er football without drama, but I've got to say that the way this game ended, it definitely was like worst case scenario.
Yep.
I heard other people talking about it. I didn't even want to bring it up like as a possibility just because it can jinx things. And I don't know. It's just bad karma. But a lot of people were worried that Brock Purdy would get injured behind this O-line. It wasn't the O-line that got him hurt. It was a well-timed blitz, a great disguised blitz in meaningless minutes of a meaningless game. And Brock Purdy, I don't know what exactly it was. To me, and again, no doctor, it looked like his elbow got hit with a helmet. Maybe it impacted a nerve. I hope it's just that, and it's something that goes away after, a couple hours, what have you. But his face on the sideline, he looked terrified. He looked so worried. I mean, and maybe it's nothing. Maybe he's just super disappointed that he couldn't get back into the game. But to me, he looked very, very worried. We'll see what the prognosis is. But
yeah, and it looked like even the report, he said he did it. He had that look of anguish on his face, and gave him the nod. And I couldn't read his lips, but it was like, I can't go in, and it just the frustration, and it's the worst case scenario. The clean pocket, but most of the night you'd had a clean pocket, and there'd been a couple things here and there, and to have it come back at the end like this, where he's under duress, and I know there was a missed face mask there. That was, again, the sack was already happening. It should have been a face mask, but I also understand why the official might not have seen that because it was tucked as he was going down. It's something now that we're going to be talking about all week and maybe all off season.
Yeah, well, hopefully not, but yeah, I mean, depending on how much it lingers. But you're right. No, you are right about that, Wiley. Listen, man, if you don't want the 49ers to be great again, then I don't know what to tell you, brother. Like I just want the 49ers to be great again.
I knew you were going to get comments.
That's what I know.
I knew you were going to get comments. I called it.
Whatever, man. Whatever. Who cares? Jason says, "Why do I call to try out a kicker? I'm no good, but I'll miss everything for half the price. Feels like Kyle Shanahan is force feeding his Cabo people lately." Ooh, that's actually a really good comment, and I agree with that. It does seem like Debo and Juice were absolutely getting force fed down the stretch.
Yep,
multiple games here.
And Debo returning kicks. Debo starting off as the starting running back. In fact, I'm looking at this. Debo. Well, Isaac Guerrero did get 9 carries. Debo got 3. Debo only 1 target tonight. So I have to say, well, I mean, so we'll talk about the Cowboys. I do believe Debo's kind of the Cowboy, but actually not a lot of volume tonight. But volume in the special teams, and he got decked and fumbled, and that could have been a disastrous injury as well.
Absolutely. 209er says, easy game breakdown. Brock Purdy and Jake Moody lost us the game. The end. Man, I saw people going as far as to say that the 49ers were tanking at the end, and that's why he threw the picks. I was like, dude, you guys have no limits. RS says, Jesse, I need that hat, sadly. We all need this hat, sadly. But Actually, what's throwing me off the most, it's a very uncomfortable hat. And you guys know me, I'm a flat bill kind of person. I don't know if I'll be able to keep this thing up for that long. It fits my face a little weird. I'm not the biggest fan of curved bill hats, but whatever. It is what it is. It was like
I
an
think you look
$8 hat.
handsome as ever. I think you look like
Oh,
you look like a
I
Tampa
appreciate
Bay,
that.
just a male model walking down. Don't apologize. You know what I hate? I always tell my wife, I hate when all these good-looking people they act. Oh, I just don't think I look at this guy. Look at this guy. He's the best looking guy in 49ers Twitter. Everybody knows it. That's why he's got all these deals with Bleacher Report. He's just on the up and up. And look at me. Look at him. Look at me. Look at him. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, chill out, X music. I'm a little offended by that. Okay, all right, I'm a little offended. One more real quick. Dave says, "How many games would we win if Dobbs had started?" First of all, the fact that they played Allen over Dobbs was embarrassing in the moment with the broken finger. It's even more embarrassing now. I get it; it was garbage time. Hopefully, Dobbs plays next week and we get to see him a little bit, and hopefully Mordecai backs him up. Maybe they both play. But the fact that Kyle Shanahan really tried to sell us that Allen is better than Dobbs is a complete joke. It always was. Frank Tom Ocean says, hoping Purdy is okay. Genty in the draft. Go 49ers. I love Ash and Genty. I do, but man, they have so many other weaknesses and holes that they've got to fill in this. So before we get too down the rabbit hole of negativity, there was some positive things that happened, and a lot of players did play well. Who's a player or two that you really want to give flowers to in this game?
Player that I want to give flowers to. Oh, I mean, hey, I hate to go. I've done this a couple games where it's like you don't want to praise the elite players too much, but I thought Nick Bosa at first. I tweeted out, "Hey, Penei Sewell's early dominating in the first quarter," and then Bosa really turned things around. And it's one of those things that just as you watch a whole game, you give up 40 points to a defense giving its all, the Lions giving their all on offense, and so you see Bosa really dominate, and then you start to ask that question. And I know this is kind of a different topic, but as I'm praising Bosa, it's like this idea of I don't want to be recency bias. Hey, they lost. Yes, you need Bosa, but boy, I'm looking around the league with all these monster defensive ends with monster contracts, and I'm seeing defenses collapse around them. And those are the type of things where you start to really worry. It's not Bosa's fault, right? But then when you compound it with contracts that could go elsewhere, I know we'll talk about that later. So that's maybe something that we talk about. But Bosa, Renardo Green, I thought played lights out. There's other things where you see a cornerback give up a reception. Actually, it's not cornerbacks don't always give up receptions. Cornerbacks are in coverage. For instance, fourth quarter, right before the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown, Jared Goff is thrown it to Jamison Williams. It gets half-yard first down. Renardo Green's right there like he was all night. Stops him from no yards up the catch for a guy that has legit 4.2 speed, right? I thought as a rookie, Renardo Green has really given the 49ers a lot of latitude in the draft. He is in a situation where he can play slot, he can play outside, he can even play safety. But of course, you don't want a guy the caliber of him playing safety if you don't need to. So Renardo and Nick Bosa for me. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I know Garindo's numbers didn't scream out. He also didn't get a lot of volume. I thought he ran really tough. I thought he absorbed a lot of good contact behind the line of scrimmage and still be able to fall forward. And of course, Ricky Pearsall. Ricky, when actually he had 10 targets tonight, 8 catches, 141 yards, the big tutty, should have been a second touchdown if Brock wouldn't have thrown a wounded duck with Ricky having 10 yards of separation on Terrion Arnold. So really nice to see these young guys show up and show out.
Yeah, man. Bosa played his butt off for sure, man. He deserves a ton of credit. I mean, he was a one-man wrecking crew. But this is the frustrating thing when guys that are paid play this well in these moments. Debo, Bosa. It's like where was this all year long? Where was this all year long? And in games that you needed to take over because they needed to win, you guys weren't there. And now, you have Debo there back-to-back weeks. Well, really more last week against Miami, this week Bosa. It's like, man, it's awesome to see. But at the same time, what the hell? Like, it's so pointless in this moment. It is great to see. Like, it's still there. That's cool. But it's so frustrating. But Ricky Pearsall and some of these younger guys playing well. Ricky especially, though. I mean, we're talking about a player. A lot of people are calling him a bust. I have not been, or at least going into the draft process, was not the biggest fan of the pick and Ricky Pearsall, but it never had anything to do with him as a player. I just felt like his age didn't fit the timeline of the 49ers. But today, seeing him play, and I get it, it's the beat up lines. I understand all those things, and maybe it won't translate. But even if just for a game, man, that guy deserves this before the offseason. He had a hell of a season to work through. And maybe this can parlay his confidence into something special. Maybe not. But for this one night, man, it was really, really cool to see him go out there and play really good football.
It's nice to see it. It's nice to see him actually get the volume that he deserved. Well, we're talking about a first-round receiver who, even last week, we were talking about, hey, Ladd McConkey and all this other stuff. And I still believe that Ladd has put together a year. And before we go even further, you mentioned obliquely a little bit before. Again, we can take away as much as we can from this game. And it did look like the Lions were going all out on offense. It did not look like they were pulling,
No, they were going all out, yes.
But again, this is a game that for all intents and purposes had no ramifications. None. Right. Next week on Sunday Night Football, the marquee matchup. It rarely happens where they get Sunday Night Football to flex that game in, where it's the game for the number 1 seed or the number 5 seed, right? And the fact that Dan Campbell, and by the way, I lost my Guillotine Fantasy Championship by Jahmyr Gibbs' 30-yard touchdown run. If it would have been a 28-yard touchdown run, I would have won $450. But my friend Andrew Beavers, I want to shout you out. You suck. But Dan Campbell, thank you for playing your starters all the way through. I thought you'd play him a half, but they didn't, right? He played tough. And still, it's easy to shine, I would say, for the 49ers in lots of situations when you're playing in the game with no pressure. Okay, Brett Rumbeck, one of my buddies from 49ers Goldmine days 4 years ago, he sent me a great 49ers starter jacket a couple of years back. He sent me a tweet out that said, no hope equals no fear, right? Like this idea that, and that's funny, like you said, it's hard to take away heaping praise on players for shining their brightest in a moment where there's nothing on the line. And the 49ers scored a touchdown on their first drive. The only time they've done it all year, tonight, right? Scoring a touchdown on their opening drive. You tell me that's not front running stuff. And I just, those are the kind of things that it's hard for me to get excited. It's hard for me to not be negative, right? It's hard for me to embrace that. And then when the 49ers fall apart, oh boy, and it's just, this game was a microcosm of the entire season. It really was.
Yeah, it absolutely was, man. It was so frustrating. And really, the last 3 games were very, very I don't understand. Hold on a second. I really don't understand what's wrong with the hat. Make the 49ers great again. I was about to take it off too because it's very itchy, like I said, uncomfortable. Now I'm going to wear it through the super chats.
Just get close to the camera so everybody can see what it said.
Make the 49ers great again. I think it's funny. It is funny.
It's wonderful.
I don't remember what I was going to say, honestly. Let's get to the super chats. Boxing fan ×4 says Jake Maher. Nice. By the way, both teams have a kicker named Jake. One was drafted in the 3rd round. The other was selling bricks. That's right. A brick seller. And you tell me whose kicker is better. Dave Barclay says, Dapper Dan, man in the hat, Jess. Love you, bud. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Much appreciated, Dave Barclay. KJ Everly says, I heard the left tackle has been growing his hair out since his last start. Maybe Jake Moody can play center. Joey Mellon says 49ers came alive in a 0 pressure game. What the F? Yeah, man, that's the frustrating thing. Go ahead.
But they came alive, and the whole, I don't know, some of you guys are on YouTube, some of you guys watch this on Twitter, some of you watch this on different platforms, right? But if you're looking at social media, it's just the most predictable thing where you're praising the team, but yet it's this, we're back. Oh, is this good enough? I thought you guys said, as watch the entire game. But even like when you temper that with this idea that you're right, Joey Mellons, you are 100% right. Right. This was a preseason game for all intents and purposes. This was basically a bye week exhibition for the Lions. to see what they had. I did not think that Dan Campbell. I thought Dan Campbell would play starters longer than most. I didn't think he'd play him all the way to the whistle.
Me neither. That I don't. I mean,
which I also think was completely stupid. When you had the opportunity to rest the most beat up team in the NFL to go play. Now you're playing on a short week, by the way, right? You play in a shorter week. You're not just playing a short week. You're playing a Monday night. The Vikings played an afternoon game on Sunday. They get a full day plus rest to go into. It stays in the Midwest. They're not traveling very far. It's the Vikings are used to playing in a dome. And by the way, just because you're a home team in a dome, it doesn't mean it's not loud when you're playing on offense. Fans like to get into it no matter what. So the Vikings are used to that type of environment. And I'm telling you right now, the Vikings are going to be ready for it. I don't think it was the right tack for Dan Campbell, but I could be wrong.
Kyle Shanahan did it. We would crush him, and I think deservedly so. Listen, I'm a big Dan Campbell guy. I've talked him up for 3 years. I thought he would be really, really good. Took a lot of flack for that. He has been really good. Some iffy things for sure. I know that in the beginning he wasn't your favorite type of coach, but you really come around on him. I think we both agree here, though. This game meant nothing for them other than an ego thing. And for a team that had to buy that early to run everybody out all game long, I don't agree with it. And as soon as the second half started, that's when they should have pulled everybody after the first half at the latest. As soon as the second half started, Amon-Ra almost got injured immediately. Very first throw, I was like, oh my, you guys are crazy. Again, if Kyle Shanahan did this, we would be hot right now. Not our team, not our problem, but still, we got to call it out because we would do it if it was Kyle for sure.
No, and I think what's hard for me to understand, and we'll talk too much more about the Lions, is that they have this is a huge game. And by the way, I was thinking, my dad was watching the game with my dad. You're thinking, hey, is the Detroit Lions owner going to say, we want to have home playoff games? And it's one thing to keep your guys fresh. I get that Dan Campbell wanted to get those guys out there in game-like situations, but once, maybe even beyond the halftime, once you've shown that you could come back, assert your will, and play well, I just think that you've learned enough there. And then I thought Kyle would do this too. He didn't for the most part. Wouldn't this be a wonderful opportunity to get some guys who don't usually get reps in case you might need them in the playoffs so that they're not just coming in cold in super crunch time. They're coming in cold in a little bit more controlled environment that doesn't have the ramifications, right? Anyway, we'll see how it goes for the Lions. I'm cheering for Lions fans. By the way, I never saw the Lions fans, but I made an exception for this game. They're out of the playoffs. My good friend, one of my best friends, Hillary, she was born on the same day in the same hospital as me in my same hometown. Her brother and her went to the game in my seats. Niners fans treated them very well, sent me wonderful pictures. Again, the first time I've ever sold outside of the Niners fan base, but I have to say I am geeked because I wanted a loss too for draft status, and I'm geeked for him because he got to see a Lions win. And I hope you guys had fun.
For sure. I had to take the hat off, man. It was super itchy. Don't recommend Etsy make 49ers great again hats. Not very comfortable, not gonna lie. Kilo TW says Pearsall channeled his inner Ayuk today. Yeah, man, he definitely did for sure. Barry says 9.99. Thank you, Barry. Appreciate you. And Jason says at least we're consistent. Moody consistently misses. Brock Purdy consistently throws fourth quarter picks. Kyle Shanahan consistently gets out coached. Special teams is consistently bad. That's the other crazy thing. As good as it's gone at times the last couple weeks, again, in meaningless games that literally there was nothing on them, they still found a way to lose. Both of them. That is crazy. That shows to me, how far behind this team is. I think it's a good time to maybe parlay into a topic that I did have based off that comment, which is, do you think that after today, watching what Debo did and Juice did and some of these other guys, that Kyle and this team are arrogant enough to really run this thing back for the most part? Because I
100%,
do.
100%. 100%. And one of the big things about that is outside of Juice, I mean, Juice you can deal with in the contract wise, but Debo, and again, George Kittle has had, I can't call it a breakout year. George Kittle's just had a phenomenal year this year. He always has a phenomenal year this year. He's an all-time 49er. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a gold jacket player. It's not even close, right? These contracts, I mean, George notwithstanding, we need George Kittle. Like this team, I mean, you can't. And George seems to be not super close to the cliff right now. I think George has at least another year of like elite play in him. But Deebo Samuel, again, 3 carries, 1 target. 3 carries, 1 target in a game he basically played the whole game. To answer your question though, Jess, I do think they are, and I think that it's going to be really hard for them to move off of Deebo unless they just. I feel like I know you and I are the exact same page. That I feel like they should rip off the Band-Aid, and I feel like they should just eat all the dead money this coming 2025 and not kick that can down into 2026. They're not going to do that though. We know that, right? We don't know that, but we both expect they're going to try and run this back the best they can because they feel like they're in some level of purgatory. And now I don't want to talk about the Purdy injury just yet because I know that's down the line here, but this more uncertainty. Does this 49ers team have the cojones to actually say, because I do believe Jed York trusts Kyle. I trust Kyle in a lot of ways. I quibble with Kyle. I critique Kyle, but I believe Kyle has what it takes to guide a team. They've been to the Super Bowl twice. They've almost won it twice. Okay. But almost doesn't pay the bills. I get that. I want to see this team have the cojones to say, Kyle, you're our guy. It's not a complete strip down to the studs, but it's stripped down to the studs and then say, okay, we're going to put some of you guys back in. We're going to rebuild you with, but we're not keeping everybody. And I just think they're going to run the band. They're going to run it back, keep the band together. And it's going to be more of the same. And I'm just going to say 49ers fans, don't be shocked next year if they do that we have another 8-9, 9-8 kind of season. And by the way, injury regression, guys are getting older. I just don't have confidence that they're going to deviate from the plan that's gotten them where they're at right now.
Yeah, man, I don't have the confidence either. The fact that they lost helped me kind of ease it a little bit. Like, okay, maybe not. But if they had won that game, it's like, oh, dude, for sure they were ready to just, man, if we're healthy, depot this. And it's like, oh my gosh, man, please do not run this thing back. But I think they will, man, for the most part. I do think that they will. And there's just so many things that this team is lacking. It's not going to be good if they run it back, in my opinion. I don't care about the fourth place schedule. I'm looking at the NFC West and trying to win the NFC West next year. I think it's going to be very, very tough.
Okay, I got some breaking.
Yeah,
okay,
what's the news?
Not permission. Well, from our guy, I'm not going to say, but
yeah.
Okay, I've been told what I can and cannot say. It says nerve issue.
It is a nerve issue, so I was right.
And just that's all I can say right now. But it's not necessarily preliminarily looking great.
Oh gosh.
Yep. So you could tell by my eyes, but that's all we can talk about right now.
Well, nerve issue is what I thought.
Yep.
You definitely, like I said, I tweeted it out right away. Helmet hit the elbow, and all of a sudden he's having wrist problems. My hope is that it's not as serious as it may seem. I think that because he had the UCL injury, I think he might be. This is what I'm hoping. This is just me speculating, but also hoping at the same time that because he's had the UCL injury, that the nerve can feel very, very similar to the UCL injury. And I think it's possible that maybe he's made it bigger in his mind than what it really is because the feeling is the same but the injury may not be that serious. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, see. And I can echo that. I'm unfortunately very in tune with these things where I've thought like, oh my gosh, this is something else. And, going to the doctor, going to the PT, going to the, actually, this is really nerve related. What you're feeling is not a tear. What you're feeling is this is not your muscle. This is not your tissue. This is just a nerves impinge, things like that. However, I have chronic issues like that. So when you're feeling something that's new, that doesn't always, we don't know. Right. Yeah. I doubt we see him in Arizona. and I think that we
No,
can
for
lock in
sure.
the number 11 pick in the draft.
Yeah, I think so as well. Curious to see what Dobbs does next week. But yeah, they whether even if he's like fine tomorrow, they can't that you cannot. I'm sorry, you cannot play him after that. Like, how much do you have to see? Like, if you need one more game to decide on Brock Purdy, that's a problem in itself. But if there's any chance that if he's your guy, you cannot play him in that final game, even if he's good to go tomorrow, in my
I want,
opinion.
and I'm not going to say hindsight is 2020 on this, but I am prepared to. I know I'm going to get a cavalcade of unfollows when I go talk about this in about an hour.
Yeah.
It wasn't because of the offensive line. Purdy
No,
actually
it
had a
was not. It was
Purdy
not.
had a clean pocket. Now I did say, hey, I couch like, oh, because of like, oh, we got Charlie Heck or Nick Zakel or whatever else. Again, the offensive line, people will perseverate on one play, sack here and there. By and large, like they have, a lot of people don't want to hear this. They played well.
Yeah.
And so in this situation, I did say though, this is a meaningless game. You and I both said, we said this back before the
4
Bills
weeks
game.
ago.
Yeah.
We're like, dude,
We said back when he had the shoulder issue. And by the way, that was bigger than they made it out to be as well. That's not completely done. And there's a lot of cortisone that helps these things, people. And to have this happen where a lot of us said, I don't know why Brock Purdy is playing, particularly behind third string offensive line in a game that has no import. And to have it happen on the final drive with less than 2 minutes to go in the game, down 12 points. The brutal irony of that cannot be lost. And you could say whatever you want, but I said about all starters. I tweeted out ad nauseum, please, please, please shut these guys down. Brock's up for a big contract. Yay or nay, right? Or how little, how much? I'm sorry, you could say it's hindsight. No, I don't have to. I can go back and show you the receipts, but it's not about I told you so. It's about, guys, come on, what are we doing? Dan Campbell, we just talked about Dan Campbell. Well, Kyle's on the same boat. What are you doing? For clout? For good vibes? So David Lombardi can tweet out that you're the best? Like, what is it? I honestly, I don't know.
Just the visual of Kyle Shanahan just sitting there like, yeah, David's gonna love this, man. I can't wait. You can't wait to be in my bag today.
John Lynch is like Stanford guy. Gotta love the guy. I love that guy in the club. Oh, I want to go shake his hand. Yeah. Red 47. Red 47.
Before we get too far, I definitely have to mention the sponsor of today's show. It's been the sponsor all season long, Underdog. Man, they are a lot of fun. Whether you like more or less you like daily fantasy, weekly fantasy, yearly fantasy, they have got you covered. Underdog, link is in the description, promo code LSS. That'll get you a deposit match 50% up to $1,000 and your one free pick. Thank you, Underdog, for being a fantastic sponsor all year long. All right, Ivan says 60 million for this. Please no, he's average at best. We're gonna, and it's tough to separate, and we just don't know. We don't know the extent of the injury fully. So because of that, I'm just gonna treat this as if he's gonna be fine. Okay. And we're gonna talk about Brock in the context of this game, unless some news breaks that says it's not going to be fine, then we will talk about that as well. Okay. But we're going to talk about Brock here in a little bit in the context of this game and this season, not necessarily in the context of the injury, because at this point it's all speculation. Danny Y'all says, my coworker just texted me saying all Purdy Romulans needs is more talent around him. Poor fellow. Yeah, dude. Correction. Brock Romulans. Okay. All right. Perfect. Thanks for the clarification. Cryptic says, so frustrating because you see glimpses of a competitive team when everyone is involved. We can go toe to toe with the number one seed. It's just not consistent, though. Yeah, but both sides are true. I mean, that yes, that is a number one seed for now. We'll see about next week. That is not the team that earned the number one seed though either. But yes, it is very, very frustrating. RS says my primary feeling about this game is that Kittle and Warner deserve better. Also, it might take 2 seasons to get this team back on track. That's pretty much what I've been saying. I believe they don't win another playoff game until the 20 what did I say? The 2026 season?
Mhm.
I think I said. Maybe I said 27. I don't remember, but it's not gonna be next year. I'll say that right now. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I know people ain't going to like this, but they might. I don't care. Fred Warner, before the game, ESPN, and I think the NFL, one of the two, I think both, tweeted out his hype video on the sideline.
Mm.
And he's going around and he said, oh, it's like Dan Campbell said, we're bringing people to the West Coast and we're going to win this game and yada, yada, yada. And he said, the best way is to beat their blank. But then he walked around with his holding his lower back. So we're going to make them limp back to Detroit. Oh, and like acting like he was like all injured and things like that. We're going to do that to them. And I'm like, this is the culture of this team. You can say whatever you want, hyping your guys up. I'm sorry. 6-19. Look, I'm all about, I know I'm going to get comments. You never played organized sports. I'm like, I get it, man. But like, the cameras are on, it's being recorded by ESPN, right? You're performing for the camera. You're 6-9. You're going nowhere. This team is playing for the number one seed next week. And you're talking about taking jabs at making them limp home, like hurting them. And then the cruel irony is who's limping home? And this is the thing. So when you make the comment about, hey, Fred Warner and George Kittle, look, there are a lot of active guys on this team. And I'm all about that. I know people talked about Joe Staley and Frank Gore and things like that. Look, Fred Warner was getting washed out all night. Nobody wants to talk about that. Fred Warner's been getting washed out a lot this year. Nobody wants to talk about that either. And it's one of those things to me where I do hear what you're saying, man. I think it's a valid comment. I love Fred Warner. My son has a Fred Warner jersey. I think he's a wonderful leader. I also think like this team, if they get too glued in, this is what Jesse and I were alluding to about running it back. If you get too glued in with appeasing these vets, you are going to fall into a trap. You have to have the courage, a la Bill Belichick, and you get the luxury of Tom Brady, to not be sentimental about when it's time to rip off the Band-Aid and switch course. It doesn't mean it's a fire sale. It means, though, you look at your young pieces, you look who you know you're going to build around, and you say, vets, we love you. We value you. We value your opinions. But you are not going to dictate personnel. You are not going to dictate free agency. You're not going to dictate the draft. And we need to start thinking about what it looks like without you. And it's not a knock on you, but they have to. And if they don't, if they worry about, oh, we got to make George Kittle another Super Bowl, or we got to get Fred Warner another Super Bowl, I'm telling you, that is not the way you run a team. It's not.
No, and I mean I agree, like it sucks for those guys, but they also had opportunities to get better, which means they both had opportunities to make big time plays and big time games to go win a Super Bowl. And George Kittle, for as great as he is, has been almost non-existent in the playoffs in his career, and that's an issue. You know what I mean? Whether that's Kyle's play calling, it doesn't matter. He as great as he's been, he hasn't been great in the playoffs, and that's just a fact. But I did want to bring this up before I got too far into this, and I just forget about it. We were talking about Fred Warner, and it made me think of the linebacker conversation. Did you catch when Aikman and Buck were talking about their pregame meeting with Kyle Shanahan and what he said about having to have 2 elite linebackers on this team?
No.
He said that, yeah, we really felt like the Super Bowl was starting to go out of hand when Dre Greenlaw got injured, and not having him this year has been really tough. Really, for our defense to be at its optimal best, we need 2 elite linebackers. What?
Okay,
you have to have 2 elite linebackers to make this your best. Instead of just scheming around what you have and changing things around, you are so stubborn that you have to run your same preference in schematics, and you have to have 2 elite linebackers to make it work. Man,
this actually makes me angry. It makes me, as a fan, as a season ticket holder, because this is clearly again, you're talking to Aikman and Buck. This isn't one of our buddies who's on the inside or talks to somebody who gets a scoop, right? This is a clearly well laundered message. And I know some of you guys think it's this paranoid. No, no, no. One thing I've learned in the last 4 years is that this is a well-oiled machine when you're dealing with the big time media. They know that Troy and Joe are going in front of the big mic to the world, right? They know exactly what they want to launder. They know exactly what they want them to say. And for them to sit there and go back and say, oh, Dre Greenlaw, playing upon all the tweets, all the fans, oh, when Dre Greenlaw went south. It actually didn't. It actually didn't. It is revisionist history. The 49ers actually regained leads. They did it. Like it, and so
interception to start the second half.
Yeah, no. They were playing lights out on defense, actually. And so Dre Greenlaw is a stud. Dre Greenlaw also got rushed back early. He's not ready. He's not well. Right? Probably actually re-aggravated and actually caused another injury. So this idea, though, that they're going to send this message like, oh, woe is me. We're not responsible for anything because it was just this happenstance injury to one of our many all-pro level players. And that's that's the keystone in the bridge that everything collapses and we all go into the river. Like, I don't understand that. And that's actually the first time I've heard Kyle and John relay that through the media directly. And it just, to me, as you're miring and like you're wallowing in pity, it's easier for them to like deflect from what they didn't achieve this year by putting it on the back of a guy who wants a second contract, who's hurt right now, and unfortunately is probably staring down the barrel of not getting the money he deserved when he was healthy. And I just think I think it's par for the course with laundering media narratives, and it's really frustrating.
Kyle Shanahan did confirm that Brock Purdy is dealing with a nerve issue in his throwing elbow.
Yeah. I mean,
so there's that. Awesome. Sherwin Young says, tell Moody Walmart is hiring. Okay.
Well, hey, man, that's a nerve issue in your UCL elbow, right? Your right elbow, your throwing elbow.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, look, he ain't playing next week, and get ready for an off season of absolute bonkers uncertainty.
I'm sorry. It's another thing. And now listen, if it's a long-term thing, it's obviously going to really impact his money and that would be messed up. I hope that this is a short-term thing, but this is just another thing. It's like, how many injuries can you have to your throwing arm that already wasn't the strongest? Think about this. All these things by themselves should give you pause as to why you should want to see another year from Purdy, or at the very least, not offer him like the supermax contract and supermax years. The injuries, torn UCL, shoulder injury, elbow injury, another elbow injury, nerve issue now, all to his throwing arm. That's one. Number two, the fact that he has not played well, really for the most part, since the Ravens game. That is, we're talking about more than a full season's worth of data right now. We're talking about nearly 50% of his career. He has not played great football. That is issue number two. And issue number three, it's like these narratives are starting to become very real. Can't play well in inclement weather.
Yep.
He had multiple opportunities over the last few weeks to prove that wrong. He could not do it.
Yep.
Can't play well in tight games, one score either way. Now he went from being ranked a couple weeks ago 148th out of 160 qualifying quarterbacks in fourth quarter stats in one score games to now, a few games later, having multiple opportunities in the same scenario, going from 148th out of 160 quarterbacks down to 151st out of 160 quarterbacks. He's gotten worse in this scenario. These are playoff games included. Man, any one of these things by themselves, like, I don't know, should we not? But then you add them all together, and for anybody to say that they are just confident, oh man, he's our franchise. Man, that is complete fandom. and you have no leg to stand on other than I just really, really like Brock Purdy and I really want a franchise quarterback. So I'm going to go ahead and just make it seem as if it's so, because there is no data to back that up at this point. None.
Jesse, I bought a Brock Purdy jersey, in between the, the mid-level, between the authentic and the, what, I mean, again, we've told the story, Iowa State fan, Niners season ticket holder, Niners fan since I was 5 years old. I'm now 13th on Facebook GIFs if you type in Brock Purdy. So I am the biggest Brock Purdy fan in the universe. I'm the only fan there. Not Brock Purdy wearing my jersey with Jesse on his camera doing this with my Roman Reigns right now. Acknowledge me. Acknowledge Brock. Acknowledge me. I want to restate what you just said. Brock Purdy went down 1 to 8 points in fourth quarter in OT in regular season or playoffs. 41 for 72 for 502 yards. 3 touchdowns, 7 INTs with a 52.9 passer rating, and I don't give up about passer rating. Purdy ranks 151st out of 160 guys. Okay, do the math. With 50-plus attempts in that scenario in the 21st century. Guys?
Not good.
So, in a way, I didn't want Kyle to play him, but then I'm like, hey, the silver lining is when Brock kind of entered into a game where now it's kind of like, hey, there's nothing to play for. But now the Niners have something to play for. The Niners are trying to situationally show, Brock's trying to show that he's not this guy. And what did he do when given the opportunity? He became that guy again.
3 straight games, the story has been the same.
Mm-hmm.
49ers are in the game. He has the ball in his hand with multiple chances to go win games.
Yep.
And you can say offensive line in one game. You can say, Kyle came out and he made the right decision. The excuses are the excuses. All I know is that in 3 straight games now, he's had the opportunity to go win games regardless of what's happened up to that point. And in all 3 scenarios, he is throwing awful interceptions. Period. End of story. 3 straight games. That is the result. Say what you want. Make the excuses you want. Spin it however you want. That is the facts. Just is.
Well, there's also something I'm getting a report on that I can't give the specifics on, but so I will not name names at all. And I won't even allude to who it is. And you won't be able to tell. But just rest assured that this is a pattern, that their tensions are high right now in this organization. And for those of you who believe in roses and rainbows, if you're watching right now, and I'm not accusing, I'm not trying to be condescending, I just want to tell you right now, those of you who've ever listened to somebody tell you that it's not always roses and rainbows at 4949 Centennial, I'm telling you, just like any place, you're going to have ups and downs. But there are tensions right now that are being unearthed and reinvigorated. And just get ready for the roller coaster, folks. And get ready for a parade of misinformation. Get ready for a parade of carefully laundered messaging through Adam Schefter, through other blue chicks, through Albert Breer, again, it's a business. I get it. These guys they're doing their thing, and God love them for doing it because it keeps people engaged and yada yada. I'm telling you right now, they're in a position where it's completely do or die. This is the most pivotal moment in this franchise's history with the Shannon Lynch tenure. What they will do in this level of uncertainty, in this level of chaos, will define their tenure, this regime, for the rest of their careers. And I know that sounds hyperbolic. It really isn't. And it's amazing how this game's arc of everybody's dapping up and loving up and hyping up and talking, about the other team. And then, boy, what 60 minutes can do.
Yeah, man. Teams are defined in tough situations. Everything's defined in tough situations. And the 49ers are going through it for sure. Sexy Potato Dancer, such a great name, says, dog on Purdy all you want, but Money Moody cost us 7 points. The exact difference between winning and losing. Put the fries in the bag, Jake. For sure. Jake also sucks. But Brock is, I'm sorry, dude. Not going to stop talking about it. Dave says, you know exactly why Lyle came alive tonight, because he listens to the crap and knows everyone wants Ben Johnson. So if he beats Ben, why replace him? Because you still are trash, Lyle. Pull your head out of your you know what. Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility for sure. Ben Johnson was in his bag again tonight, though. My goodness.
Yep.
My goodness. And here we go. Here's the spin. Barry Reed says 27 of 35, 377 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions with no offensive line, but he sucks. Pay the man for a game we're supposed to lose by 30. Are you guys want to fire Kyle Shanahan, who got us to 2 Super Bowls and 4 NFC championships? No, I've actually never said fire Kyle Shanahan. I have said don't pay Brock Purdy, though. And I stand by that big time.
Can I say one thing, though? Do you guys realize that okay, one of the touchdown passes.
Thank you. But real quick, though, I do want to say thank you for the super chat and thank you for contributing. We definitely disagree on this, but go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay. One of the touchdown passes was a 2-inch touch pass to Deebo Samuel. One of them was a bootleg rollout on a dump off to Kyle Juszczyk behind the line of scrimmage. The other one was a 4-yard touchdown pass to Ricky Pearsall, where the defender was behind him and it just had to throw it to his chest. Right? Like, guys, come on now. Like, again, this is why we can't box score scout. You have to watch the game. So when Purdy has pocket mobility or he does certain things, or even for short throws, we credit him. The throw to Garindo when he was under duress and getting hit, that was an amazing throw. It's one of the best throws of his career. But the throw to Pearsall, that was one of his better throws. I agree. I tweeted that out. That was a really good throw. Even stepping up in the pocket, moving and like hitting Pearsall where he had to kind of one-handed, that actually wasn't a bad throw at all. Another throw where he was kind of moving and had to go back to the middle of the field to Kittle with tight coverage. Great throw. He made some good throws, right? But again, the zip is not there. Even on those throws, the 50-50 ball late in the game, right before he got hit and hurt, to that, I think it resulted in a 4 and out. I think it was a 4 and out. I could be wrong.
No, I think they kicked like a 59-yard field goal.
That was the field goal. Yeah. Again, no zip. The Ricky Pearsall would-be touchdown where he had 10 yards of separation. And this is not a huge long. I mean, this is just a throw that has to happen. This is a throw where Ricky walks into the end zone. And people could say, yeah, but it's the completion. But there was no safety deep. There was no defender deep. There was no risk of putting it into a window, right? You just have to you don't even have to have it perfect. You just have to, you could even make him wait a hitch, but have him, he doesn't have to be in stride completely. You just have to throw it. You lead it 2 more yards, or 5 more yards, or 7, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. And he's not coming through. So when you guys box score scout these things, it doesn't work that way. And when you look at the interceptions were bad. Eric Crocker, a former NFL cornerback, our friend, Eric Crocker, says that second Purdy interception, the middle of the field safety didn't even move at the snap. But he sat, I could just hear Eric saying this, but he sat there staring at Purdy, ready to trigger on the dig. Wow. Okay. This is a former NFL cornerback. Okay. Just got a head coach job in Stockton, super stoked for Crocky, right? Eric is not a guy who just dogs on Brock but he calls it how he sees it. Okay. So when we're talking about that, those are Jimmy JV interceptions. Okay. Those, and he almost threw a third one. Actually, he almost threw 4 tonight.
Almost threw 4. Though before he threw the first one, he did throw one, but it was pass interference or whatever.
That's right.
Okay, sure. But it was severely overthrown. Again, we can talk about no O-line and whether the question is which one of those interceptions or near interceptions were because he had pressure in his face. I'll wait. And if you can say, hey, he had pressure in his face and it was
none of them,
but he didn't. You like cherry picking and saying, hey, he didn't have an offensive line. That all sounds great, but they didn't have a defensive line either. They couldn't generate consistent pressure either. Yeah, and what it was all fine. Nobody had any issues with the offensive line when everything was looking good and they were scoring on every drive. And the moment he throws a couple picks, oh, geez, I don't know, man. The offensive line, it was so bad all day long. Was it though? Was it that bad all day long to where they scored 28, no problem? But the moment that the game got tight and he had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to go win that game, he had 3 opportunities down the stretch to go win the game and be the reason. He couldn't get it done again for the 3rd week in a row.
Yep.
The 3rd week in a row.
Yep.
At what point does he get any blame for this? It's a question for anybody that thinks he can do no wrong. At what point, man? It's insane to me. The lengths people literally over the last few weeks have gone so crazy that they will say crap about Steve Young to prop up Brock Purdy. Like, that's where we're at as a fan base. You guys are going so far the opposite direction that you will talk ish about a Hall of Fame quarterback who won a Super Bowl for this franchise.
Oh my God.
To prop up Brock freaking Purdy. Get a grip.
Well,
get a grip. He's not that good. He's cool. He is a good quarterback, but he, much like we're seeing with Sam Darnold, we've seen with Geno Smith, we've seen with Kirk Cousins, we've seen with Kyler Murray, we're watching with Jared Goff,
Baker Mayfield,
Tagovailoa, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott. These are all guys that when things are awesome around them, they too can be awesome. And not every quarterback can you say that about. Okay? But they are not guys that when things are not going great around them, that they can just carry and carry and carry and put teams on their back and go win ball games consistently. Brock is just in a line with a bunch of other guys that if you put them in this system last year, they would have performed at their peak, at their best, much like you're watching Sam Darnold, who was a backup to Brock Purdy last year, has not been good in this league. You think all of a sudden he's just an elite quarterback, or do you think maybe he's in a really, really good situation, a lot like Brock was, who all of a sudden can't find his fucking ass from his right hand, apparently, and all of a sudden he's falling apart and he can't not throw picks when the game matters most. No, it's because things aren't great around him. And quarterbacks that are great, that this fan base consistently has put behind Brock Purdy, they do it. Justin Herbert, as a rookie, the worst offensive line in football. Go look at what he did. 2021, the 24th ranked offensive line and the 29th ranked defense, 9-win team, put up 45 something touchdowns and like 5,000 yards. Those are elite quarterbacks, but those are guys that you knock down a peg to put Brock Purdy above because of quarterback wins, as if we haven't seen this before with Colin Kaepernick, with Jimmy Garoppolo. How many times are you going to fall for the same thing over and over and over, man? He's just not that good. He's not.
Jesse, you've been preaching, and you just segued perfectly because I said I'm a history teacher, and I teach about tropes. I teach about people will parade out these things like, hey, in modern day, we've never been more divided than we are right now. So actually, I do a research project where they do, it's called the partisan politics in history, where they look at a different era in the 20th century where there had been really strongly divided, and they compare that whatever issue, it could be from the 1920s, it could be about a battle around Social Security, it could whatever, okay, and they compare it with a 21st century hotly divided social political issue, and they compare how people used to divide people, or what propaganda they used, or what type of tactics they used to try to get people to persuade them to be on their side, and so on and so forth. When you brought up Jimmy Garoppolo, I remember, I don't have to remember, I have the documentation, right, where we're having very similar knee-jerk visceral reactions to any type of criticism of a quarterback. And it has now become socially acceptable to say Jimmy is a bum. Okay. Nobody's saying Brock's a bum, by the way. I believe Brock is a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo, unequivocally. Okay. I also remember, though, is that you used to be taken to the woodshed. Go grab a switch, basically. If it's like you said anything bad about Jimmy, Jimmy's our quarterback. Who are you saying? You're being too negative. Blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm telling you, history is starting to repeat itself, not identically, but in the way in which we divide. So in the way in which people will try to propagandize, the way in which people will try to dig in their heels and get in their camps, the way in which they will try to ostracize or alienate other people for having a different view that they do. They don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation about the uncertainty of what's going forward. And we are back in the same spot again, I'm not saying they're identical players. I'm saying these are very, very similar situations, and we're eking a little bit closer, inching a little bit closer to some more realization that maybe the Emperor isn't wearing as much clothes as we thought he was. Maybe we've married ourselves to the idea that we want Steve Young to the point where we are comparing him to Steve Young, who is a top 10 quarterback in NFL history, folks. NFL history. A quarterback who I think, unpopular among a lot of Niners fans, I thought was a better quarterback than Joe Montana. And Joe Montana is a GOAT candidate. This is, I'm sorry, guys, when we've got so delusional where we are invoking Steve Young, the last quarterback to will this team to victory 30 years ago, multiple time MVP, put his body on the line as a player, as a runner, as a pocket passer, highlight after highlight. I mean, one of the toughest players that played the quarterback position in the history of the game. I have people talking about that Steve Young didn't even have a strong arm. Y'all, we have to stop. We have to start being more objective. And one more thing that we got some information here. We got some news. We can't be clear on, but rest assured that this nerve issue could be more. This nerve issue could be more. That's all I can say. And the demeanor in the locker room and in the organization right now is dour.
Unbelievable, man.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not making that up.
James says, what happened to Purdy saying he wanted to be like Tom Brady in the fourth quarter? Yikes. Yeah, for sure, dude. Brother Bob says, member for 19 months, breaking Moody and Kyle Levy extended for 4 years. Oh, man. Willie Reynolds says, what about a trade for JJ if Darnold is re-signed? Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do, man. They've got an interesting situation over in Minnesota for sure. It's something to monitor. Dave Barclay says, Brother Bob, Moody has always looked new. Sucks. Dazza says, what makes you think they'll do anything different next year to get different results? They don't invest in the offensive line. Purdy is solid, but not elite. I don't have any confidence, Dazza. That's the frustrating thing. Mufasa says, this team reminds me of the 2008 49ers with Mike Singletary. Lots of dysfunctional players in the locker room, had the pieces, but couldn't put it together. The difference is that this team is on the end of a run, and they've hung on too long, and that is the issue. How do you turn that thing around? I don't know. Jason says, one good year and multiple injuries. Pay Purdy now. Yeah, exactly. Dave says, Dobbs plays, we win. We could have seen a 7-10 season. Bill says, silver lining, if we had won, there would be no need to change the quarterback or the kicker in 2025. Yeah. Dave says, sponsor Patriot Builders of Montana all year long. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. G Master Cupcake says Riley Leonard booking it now. That's the Notre Dame quarterback. Yeah.
Yes.
I hear that he's well liked by the 49ers.
He is well liked by the 49ers, and he's going to be on live television in a couple days.
Yeah, I haven't listened. Full transparency, I really haven't watched these quarterbacks at all as far as film, so I have no idea. I've just heard his name, and I've heard that he's liked. Rocky, I don't even know. Dobbs played as well as Purdy, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, listen, it was throwaway garbage time. We'll see next week. Hopefully he gets to play with some starters, though, for sure.
Well, hey, Josh Dobbs tweeted out 20 minutes ago, who needs a warm-up?
He's frustrated with his scenario. He really is. He's a nice guy, very, very smart, but he's frustrated with this scenario. Brother Bob says Kyle Levy would break Riley Leonard too. Yeah, you may not be lying about that. Bill Kennedy says Warner should not have been playing with a broken ankle. Brother Bob, I don't disagree with that. Brother Bob says Kyle Levy's game. Kyle Levy game CMC more money while
Gave.
he was hurt.
Yeah.
Oh, gave.
Probably supposed to be Gave. Come on, brother Bob. Let's go. Jeez.
Come on, brother Bob. Joshua says clean pockets are not helping Brock Purdy either. Listen, here's a stat for you. Brock Purdy this year pressured on 37.7% of his dropbacks, which is 9th most in the NFL. Sam Darnold pressured on 37.1% of his dropbacks. Interesting stat. And I'm not even a freaking Sam Darnold guy.
But by the way, pressures on quarterbacks are not all due to the offensive line. And we looked at a stat a couple weeks ago where Caleb Williams, and clearly Caleb has been creating sacks. Right. I mean, the last couple of games has gotten worse. I mean, it's really embarrassing, to be quite honest. And I know he's a rookie, and I'm not, but yikes. But Brock Purdy had actually been, per dropback, creating more sacks for himself at a 40% higher rate than Caleb Williams. But nobody wants to talk about that. We're not talking about creating sacks. We're not talking about sacks for total. We're talking about the sacks that are not due to the fault of offensive linemen. And so that pressure rate is not just, that's not a calculation of defensive line win rate, pass rush win rate. That's just when they're pressured. And the pressure can be because, and oftentimes is because, the quarterback has walked into a pocket, has backed up into a pocket that's being pushed around, has not had any mobility, has not stepped up, etc.
Yeah, and I don't think either of us are trying to sell that the offensive line has been great. No. But the point is this: when you look at where they rank and all the other things, there are a lot worse in the NFL, and there are quarterbacks making do with a lot worse in the NFL. And Jeebus says the gap between Brock and a journeyman like Dobbs is not that big. Just seems like if they pay Brock, they're simply paying the max for a guy who can run Kyle's system smoothly. Is that worth $60 million? Yeah, I mean, that's my whole argument is like, if you can get 85% of Brock Purdy, which I think is a lot easier to find. Like, I'm not saying the question is always, oh, well, then who are you going to replace him with? Who's going to be better? You don't have to be better. Who can you get that's 85% of Brock Purdy? And a lot of those guys exist, by the way, at a fraction of the cost, because that plus all the millions they can spend on other players to keep this team super, super talented is a much better option, in my opinion, than paying top of the dollar for Brock Purdy and stripping talent away. It just is.
And Brock's not playing next week. And Brock just was at the press conference and said, asked about his elbow, Brock says, doesn't feel the best. On that sack, I got hit on the backside, and basically my arm was on fire. I tried throwing, and at that point, I couldn't. Now, this is just echoing what else we can't share that we've heard from inside the building. So this, though, does corroborate that to a degree. And his demeanor at the mic was understandably, like he looks dejected. And I feel, we can critique Brock, right? None of us are. Brock he's a good NFL quarterback, right?
He's a good person too. Like,
and he's a phenomenal,
very good person. Yeah.
And he's a kid that at Iowa State, as our buddy Jay always talks about, really changed the culture there. You don't meet anybody that ever says a mean word about him, right? Builds everybody up around him. I mean, he's a salt of the earth dude. And so to see him, again, the only jersey I own is Brock Purdy. To see him like that, it's with his contract coming up, is it's a hard pill to swallow on the final drive of a meaningless game, down 12.
OC Niner Dodger fan. Yeah.
My bad.
OC Niner Dodger fan says ownership is not going to be happy with fans not showing up in the stadium with this mid quarterback. Too much talent to be 6-10.
Nope.
I so hate the freaking excuses for the bad QB play. As do I. Mike drops with Monza. Says Brock talked his injury. It does not sound good.
Nope.
No, it doesn't sound good. GTC Real says people talk crap about Steve Young. What I miss? Oh, way more than you would even realize, man. It is going rampant the last like 4 weeks or so.
Oh yeah.
Spider369 says Zach Wilson or Riley Leonard. Yeah, I'm not a big Zach Wilson guy. I don't know much about Riley Leonard. But like I said, any quarterback that's 85% of Brock Purdy at a fraction of the cost, sign me up. Brandon says Brock trying to help us get a top pick team player. For sure. For sure. Mike Drops with Monza says, I'll take Steve over Joe. Just saying. Yeah, I think for a lot of us, he's our GOAT. I love Steve Young. Gaza says, you think Wash would trade Purdy for Daniels? Washington. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be all about that. Dave says, feel like someone called this whole season 7-10 bet. Yeah, you definitely did.
Wow.
GTC Reels says the reason why we are here is because of Shanahan's personnel moves. You can't miss on early rounders and overpay older players. It's time. Yes, very well said. Fantastic point.
But go ahead, Jess, because I just think it needs to be elevated, because this is something that we lose track of because we always say sunk cost fallacy and everything else. It's not. So when you hit on day 3 players, a lot of that, guys, is scouting, but a lot of those are dart throws, right? It's supposed to be easier to hit, even though it's not 100%. But we're talking about a 20% hit rate, right? We're like in the first round, in the second round, the third round, they're horrible. And so when you drafted Trey Lance and you gave up the picks 22 and 23 in the first round, that counts as draft picks, right? So you're not hitting on those picks. You're not using those picks for anything. And now you're at a spot where your players are getting older and hurt and you're trying to move on from them, but you don't have the necessary capital built up in your franchise with people that could have, and they wouldn't have all hit, right? We get that. But if half of them hit, which is about the rate in the first round, just to be a good player, we're not talking about elite, we're not talking about Hall of Fame, half of those hit, it gives you so much financial latitude. It makes you not have to restructure people and like extend people and feed into the cowboy culture. And I think that's a wonderful GTC. I think that's a very salient, important point, and most Niner fans don't want to talk about it.
Completely agree. Sherwin says, do we draft a quarterback next year? They got to do that or bring in some sort of veteran. They got to do something, man. They got to do something. They do. They got to be better. The quarterback room has to be better, and especially if you assume Brock's going to be the starter, which I think we all still do assume that, depending on, let's see how this injury is, but I think we all assume he's going to be the starter one way or another. If that is the case, they have to hedge their bets in one way or another. They just do. Carlos, what's up, Carlos? Says, yo, Jesse, I disagree with you on Purdy, but you the man, and I appreciate your work. Appreciate you. Looks like I'm in good shape to win the Underdog Best Ball League. Man, I'm going to have to go look at it. If that is the case, I owe you a jersey. I did 2 of those. There are jerseys that are owed for that league. Spider369 says John Lynch was not happy giving Trey Lance vibes. Ooh, John Lynch not happy. People are talking about his reaction, I guess, at some point in the game. I didn't pay too much attention to it, but might have to go back and check that one out.
We can't talk about it's not okay. Let's just say you're barking up the right tree, but we can't talk about specifics here. That must have, it's again, and this is I'm telling you guys, all is not well. This is the worst. I'm going to say this is the worst case scenario for this team. It's the worst case scenario to play your players for good vibes, have your quarterback who you are allegedly, and now this Brock and his family and his agent, and oh, daddy.
Well, I'll say this, man. If this Brock Purdy injury is serious, they're gonna be in shambles this offseason, man. It's gonna be an awful offseason for these guys, man. And
And
We'll
keep in
see.
mind, Brock's been making peanuts on the dollar. Like he has earned the right to get paid, and he has been paid like a indentured servant in the NFL. I mean, he is like a 61st ranked quarterback contract in the entire NFL. I mean, it's insane. He is playing for like I think just a shade over $1 million or even less. Like it's nuts, right? And so it to have this happen and then have that inhibit your ability to get paid what you were going to be worth. And I think Ryan Clark talked about it. Jason Kelsey talked about it tonight. They were saying, hey, the bottom line is Brock Purdy's agent's going to go and say, you're telling me the way I've played and what I've been doing that I'm not going to get money like Jordan Love based on some less games or up and down the line. And it is what it is, right? And the salary cap goes up. Brock Purdy was sitting pretty. He was going to get he's going to get paid. This injury, though, I think a lot of Niners fans do forget, and it does bear mentioning. I know a lot of you guys are like you're super zoned in. He's still in his 4th year on his contract. They literally do not have to pay. It's not a lot of fans that I talk to. They're assuming that this contract talk has like been like, oh, he's up for you're going to franchise tag him. No, they don't have to franchise tag him until 2026. This is going to be very interesting.
I agree. You know what they should do? They should bring in all the quarterbacks from the 2021 draft, since they're all free agents, basically, and just make them have a mid-off, figure out who their starter is going to be. Dave says Lynch was pissed, cussing at one point on camera. I don't know how I missed that. I'm just like blind, apparently. But that doesn't surprise me. I mean, he's a fiery fellow. I'll tell you that. OC Niner says Steve Young made all of us fans as kids. Stop the lies. He's our GOAT. Bro, it's funny. I've told this story a few times. I legit can throw a good 30-yard tight spiral left-handed because of Steve Young. In fact, with my kids, I coach flag football. Today, I was having them to start practice. I was having them run 9 routes, and I was throwing them lefty to them. And they're like, how do you throw left-handed so good? It's like, Steve Young, he's my GOAT. And that's literally learned to throw lefty because of him.
You sounded like Uncle Rico, but you're Uncle Jesse.
Yeah, dude,
so
I
you're
could
like
throw
John
a football
Stamos
over those mountains left-handed. Are you
and that's
kidding
the thing.
me?
I told you he looked like John Stamos. Good-looking guy. Like he can wear any hat he wants. Uncle Jesse over here. My God.
Yeah,
full house.
Dude. Football over the mountains left-handed. What do you think about that? Eat your heart out, dude. David, man, thank you again for joining me. I know that the last game won't mean anything, and it sucks that we're not going to have a playoff run to do this thing all the way through, but I do appreciate you once again for riding the season out with me, and we will definitely make sure that we get after next week's game, and we'll just kind of put a cap on the season together. And of course, you'll be back during draft time, and anytime something big happens, if you ever want to come on, you know you can. Dazza says fans want to pay Brock more than Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, and Burrow. Look at what Mahomes and Allen have done with less talent. Also, Burrow took the Bengals to a Super Bowl, taking 51 sacks. Tired of the Purdy excuses. Listen, man, he's there. I said this in a show with Grant, and I said it and somewhere on Twitter in a thread with Grant, where guys like Stroud, Purdy, and Love were borderline top 10, if not top 10 after last season. But the bottom half of the top 10 is always in flux. And until you can put together multiple seasons of really good football play, you do not get a locked in spot into the top 10. And once you do, you're pretty much elite. Like if we can count on you being a top 10 guy year after year after year, you're in that conversation. But we see the back end of the top 10 always in flux because there's a lot of guys. This year, Sam Darnold's in there. Last year, Dak was in there. Kirk Cousins has been in there. There's a lot of guys in this league that have been borderline top 10 guys for a season or two. It's can you do it consistently year after year after year after year? And for those, at least two of those players, Love, he's still iffy as well. But for Stroud and Purdy, the answer right now is no. The answer right now is no. And we're going to have to see if either one of them can consistently do it. But what we care about is Brock because he's our quarterback and the decision has to be made now. This is why you cannot take that leap and just pay him. You can't. It would be a mistake. Dave says, would have gone to state if coach had put you in, huh, Jess? That's a fact. Would have gone to state, bro. It's just, I mean, everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Football over those mountains. All right, David. Appreciate you. Much love to everybody in the chat. I'll be back soon. Peace.